Have you ever worked your whole life for a single moment, only to watch it shatter before your eyes? Maybe you've trained, prepared, prayed, and believed. Yet when the time finally came, something went wrong. The pain of that instant, the disbelief, the emptiness, can feel unbearable. You fall, and the world keeps running past you. People may not see the effort you gave, the nights you cried, or the hope you carried. All they see is that you didn't make it. But sometimes, life's most powerful victories aren't written in medals or records. They are written in the moments when a person refuses to stay down. When everything says quit, yet the heart whispers, just one more step. In the summer of 1992, during the Olympic Games in Barcelona, one runner experienced this truth in front of millions. His dream was destroyed in seconds. But what happened next turned that broken moment into a symbol of unbreakable courage. This isn't a story about winning gold. It's a story about finishing what you start. It's about love, perseverance, and the strength to rise again when everything inside you screams in pain. Stay till the end, because this story might change the way you see failure, courage, and what it truly means to win. Barcelona, 1992. The sun blazed over the Olympic Stadium, and the crowd roared like a living wave. Among the thousands of athletes who came chasing glory, one man stood quietly at the starting line. Derek Redmond, a 26-year-old sprinter from Great Britain. For years, he had fought his way through injury after injury, surgeries, and endless rehabilitation. Yet every morning, he woke with the same dream: to finish the race that once defeated him. This wasn't just another 400-meter sprint for Derek. It was redemption, a chance to prove to himself, to his country, and to the boy who had once run barefoot in the rain that he could still fly. The memory of his past failures haunted him, but beneath that fear lived something stronger: determination. In the tunnel before the race, Derek's father had placed a steady hand on his shoulder and whispered, "You've come too far to give up now." That simple sentence carried years of struggle, hope, and love. It was more than encouragement. It was a promise between a father and a son. As Derek walked onto the track, the crowd's energy filled the air. He adjusted his stance, eyes fixed on the finish line. In that moment, everything else disappeared. The pain, the pressure, the past. All that remained was the sound of his heartbeat and the taste of the dream he'd chased for so long. When the gun fired, he exploded from the blocks. For 150 meters, his body moved like poetry, smooth, powerful, free. It felt like destiny calling him forward. But destiny, as it often does, had another test waiting. Before the race, Derek had shared a quiet moment with the man who had been there through every injury, every heartbreak: his father, Jim Redmond. They didn't talk about medals or records. They talked about courage, about finishing no matter what. Jim had watched his son's journey from the beginning. The boy who used to sprint down muddy fields with laughter in his eyes, now standing beneath Olympic lights, shoulders tense with purpose. He knew the years of pain behind that calm expression. He knew how many times Derek had wanted to quit, and how many times he hadn't. "Whatever happens out there," Jim had said gently, "promise me you'll finish what you start." Derek nodded. That was their pact, silent but sacred. For Jim, those words weren't about running. They were about life, about facing storms head-on, even when they break you. And for Derek, they became an anchor. A quiet strength that whispered through his veins as he stepped onto the track. When the race began, Jim watched from the stands, heart pounding, every fiber of his being running alongside his son. He could see Derek's stride, powerful and smooth. He could almost taste the long-awaited triumph. Then, in a heartbeat, everything changed. A sudden snap echoed through the air. Derek stumbled, his face twisted in agony, his dream collapsing in front of millions. The crowd gasped. Medics rushed forward. But far above the chaos, one man's heart broke louder than the stadium itself. Jim rose from his seat. He didn't think. He just moved. The mentor's moment was about to begin. Not with words this time, but with love that would carry his son to the finish line. Derek fell to the ground, clutching the back of his right leg. The pain was searing, sharp enough to steal the air from his lungs. In that instant, he knew. His hamstring had torn. His Olympic dream, years in the making, had shattered in less than 10 seconds. Around him, the other runners sped past, their silhouettes fading toward the finish line while he lay motionless on the track. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The crowd fell silent. Derek's mind screamed in disbelief. Not again, not now. He had promised himself that this time would be different, that this time he would finish. The medics rushed toward him, signaling for him to stay down, to let them help, but something deep inside refused to surrender. Derek pushed their hands away and began to rise. His leg trembled violently under his weight. Every step sent fire shooting through his muscles. But still, he moved. One step, then another. The crowd began to murmur. They could see what he was doing. He wasn't giving up. He was limping, dragging his broken leg down the track, determined to finish the race he had started. And then, out of the corner of his tear-filled eyes, Derek saw movement on the edge of the track. A figure was pushing through the security guards, shouting, "That's my son! That's my son!" It was his father, Jim. Jim broke through the officials and sprinted toward Derek. The guards tried to stop him, but he brushed them aside with the strength of a father's love. When he reached his son, he wrapped his arms around him. "Derek, you don't have to do this," Jim said, holding him tightly. "Yes, I do," Derek gasped through the tears. "Then," Jim whispered, his voice steady, "we'll do it together." And so they did. Father and son, side by side, step by step, began the slow, painful journey to the finish line. The crowd rose to their feet. At first there was silence. Then came the applause, a thunderous wave that shook the stadium. Thousands of strangers wept as they watched two men defy defeat itself. Derek leaned into his father's shoulder, sobbing, every step a mix of agony and grace. He wasn't running anymore. He was surviving, guided by the one person who believed in him unconditionally. The cameras zoomed in, capturing what words could never describe: love carrying courage across the finish line. When they finally crossed, there was no medal, no record, no victory in the conventional sense. But in that moment, the stadium knew they had witnessed something far greater than winning. Derek didn't finish first. He finished standing. And sometimes, that is the greatest triumph of all. Long after the applause faded, people still remembered that race. Not for who won, but for who refused to quit. Derek Redmond never stood on the Olympic podium that day. There was no gold, silver, or bronze placed around his neck. Yet his image, leaning on his father, crossing the line in pain and tears, became one of the most unforgettable moments in sports history. Because what the world saw that day was not defeat. It was the raw truth of the human spirit. Life doesn't always reward the fastest, the strongest, or the most talented. Sometimes it rewards those who simply refuse to stop moving forward, even when the world tells them they're done. Derek's torn muscle became a symbol, a wound that spoke louder than words. Pain doesn't mean failure. Falling doesn't mean it's over. In that moment, a father's embrace became a metaphor for every unseen love that lifts us when we break. Jim didn't carry his son to victory. He walked beside him to help him finish. That's what love does. It doesn't remove the struggle. It gives you the strength to continue through it. And maybe that's what real success is. Not the medals, not the applause, but the quiet act of standing again, of saying, "I'm not done yet." How many of us have faced moments like Derek's? Moments when everything we built fell apart, when dreams tore mid-race, when we wanted to quit. Yet something, a parent's voice, a friend's belief, a flicker of faith, pushed us to take one more step. The truth is, we all fall, but what defines us is how we rise. You may never stand on a stage or hold a trophy. You may never be cheered by thousands, but every time you rise after pain, you are living proof that victory isn't measured by who finishes first. It's measured by who never gives up. Because courage isn't about running without falling. It's about running even when you're broken. Picture that moment again. A son limping toward the finish line, his father's arm around him, the stadium standing in stunned silence. The sun hung low above the track, turning their tears into tiny diamonds of light. They weren't racing anymore. They were enduring. And in that quiet, the world saw something far greater than speed. It saw heart. We all have our own race. Some days the path feels smooth and full of promise. Other days it feels like our legs give out beneath us, and everything we dreamed of collapses. But remember, Derek, remember that even when life tears something inside you, you can still move forward, one trembling step at a time. Because strength isn't the absence of pain. It's the will to rise in spite of it. And love, the kind that stands beside you when you can no longer stand alone, is the force that turns broken moments into miracles. Maybe you've fallen recently. Maybe you're limping through a season that feels endless. But listen carefully. Your story isn't over. You still have a finish line waiting for you, and you're not meant to cross it alone. So lift your head. Take one more step. Let faith, love, or even the memory of someone who believes in you be the shoulder you lean on. Because someday you'll look back and realize the fall didn't break you. It revealed how strong you truly are. Even in pain, there's beauty in rising again. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who might need a reminder that falling isn't the end. Maybe there's a friend, a brother, or a loved one who feels like giving up. Let Derek's journey remind them that courage is born in the moments we choose to keep going. Subscribe to Inspire Through Stories for more true tales of resilience, hope, and the human spirit. Every story here is a spark, and together we can light a world that refuses to give up. Because sometimes the greatest victories happen not when we win, but when we rise.